Hey, good morning. It's good to be with you. Love being with you. So glad you're here. And hey, if this is your first time, thank you for choosing to spend part of your weekend with us. And we want you to know that all are welcome here, no matter where you are on your spiritual journey. We've had a lot of fun this summer as we've looked at what wisdom is and how to apply God's wisdom to everything from the affections of our heart to the words we say to the way we treat others. We've looked at the significance of friendships and how to repair broken friendships. Last week, we looked at what God has to say and what the Proverbs has to say and celebrate about sex and why sex should matter more to us than it does. And today, as we wrap up this series, we're going to look at, as Matt said, how to make wise decisions around our future. And I know how important this is because honestly, I haven't always made the greatest decisions. Anyone in here with me? I haven't always done that. Okay, I am not alone. For example, in college, a good friend who in hindsight probably was not that great of a friend introduced me to an opportunity that would revolutionize my life and future by stepping into the business of, you ready for this? Prepaid phone cards, all right? Now, this was during the day of payphones. Some of you are like, you mean iPhones? No, I mean payphones. This was 1997, okay? Steve Jobs was just becoming the CEO of Apple. The first iPhone was still 10 years away, but because most college students didn't carry around enough quarters to do laundry and call their mom, if you wanted to make a phone call in a relatively simple and easy fashion, you carried a prepaid phone card. So the market was ripe. So my buddy invited me into this business head first. For only $150, I got into the 8th tier of a 9-tier pyramid, received $50 worth of free phone cards as a welcoming gift, and the guy who brought me in got a $1.50 bonus for landing another sucker. Full disclosure, okay? I was going to make millions, and I never sold a single card, okay? Yeah. It was a stupid decision. And I wish I could say that it was the last stupid decision I ever made, but it was not. In this series, we've discovered that we will literally make millions of decisions over the course of our lives. You know, some of them relatively small, such as what you chose to wear when you came in today, the fact that you wore clothes is a sign of wisdom, okay? Or where you're going for lunch afterwards, or it's relatively insignificant to decide what NFL game you're going to watch next Sunday, because we know the answer is you are going to watch the New England Patriots, right? Yeah, shout out for my 3 buddies in the room, okay? No, so we make small and relatively inconsequential decisions every day, but at the same time, we will make countless significant, life-shaping, future-determining decisions. So this week, I asked thousands of my very close and personal friends on Facebook to answer the question, what is one of the most important decisions you've ever made? And they responded like this. Deciding where to attend college. See if any of these resonate with you. Whether or not to enlist in the military. Whom to marry. When to eat at Chick-fil-A. Oh, that came from a 3-year-old. Like, his parent is my friend on Facebook. I don't know him. I'm sure he's nice, but he wants to know that. Focusing on my health. Determining when to have kids. I love this. Choosing to raise a child as a teenager. Continuing to work after I had children. Deciding to buy a house, placing my husband with Alzheimer's into a nursing home, getting baptized, getting sober, staying alive. I mean, and the list goes on and on and on of the most important decisions we've made. So the question is, when it comes to all of the significant decisions we will face, how do we make wise decisions that lead to great outcomes instead of stupid decisions that lead to dead-end pyramid schemes, right? Now, how do we do that? And so today what I want to do, if you're taking notes, is I want to give you 1 way to make terrible decisions, all right? And 3 ways to make great decisions. The first write this down. If you want to make absolutely terrible, atrocious decisions, listen to this proverb, Proverbs 21:5. Good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but here it is. But hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. Now, a recurring theme through the Proverbs is that if you and I make hasty or impulsive or thoughtless decisions in our lives, it will lead toward poverty more times than not. And this can certainly refer to the kinds of poverty that result from poor financial decisions, such as buying the sports car you really can't afford before asking your wife because the car salesman said you looked good in it. Ask yourself, has a car salesman ever told anyone they don't look good in the car they're thinking about buying? All right? No. Or, how about getting into a house payment that is way beyond your means just because the loan officer said you could afford it, right? Or, how about this? What about the credit card company that wants to award you as a loyal customer by increasing your credit limit by another $10,000? Do you really think that Mr. MasterCard or King Visa care about your loyalty? In fact, they benefit from your disloyalty. It's called a finance charge. And so they'll do anything to tell you how great you are to increase the amount of money you spend. So Solomon's saying if we make hasty or impulsive decisions, it can lead to financial compromise. At the same time, there are many other ways to become impoverished by hasty decisions, aren't there? Such as relational poverty. Think about this. How many of us have stepped into a romantic relationship because she was hot or he had an 8-pack, okay? Thank you for noticing, all right. Listen, you can be hot without a heart, right? Or you can have an 8-pack without an ounce of respect or integrity. And some of us wound up emotionally and relationally impoverished because of a bad relationship, didn't we? Or how about becoming occupationally poor by making a series of impulsive decisions at work that compromise our employment or career advancement? Everyone know anyone like that? Or how about this? How about becoming reputationally poor? Because of the words you say or we say or the actions that we carry out that can gain us a reputation for being undependable or unkind or disloyal. Solomon says, when we make decisions without really thinking things through or considering their outcome, we'll end up poor more times than not. So that's how to make an atrocious decision, okay? But he says there's a better way. Look again at verse 5. It begins with this: good planning and hard work lead to prosperity. But it's the hasty shortcuts that lead to poverty. He says if you want to make great decisions that can lead to blessing and joy and peace and contentment, that's what it means by prosperity, in every area of your life, he says pay close attention to the details. Patiently consider every option before making the decision. In a sense, he says, plan well and work hard. Now, turn to someone around you and say, plan well and work hard. Plan well and work hard. That's right. Plan well and work hard. Now, you say, well, what does that mean? To plan well and work hard. When I look back at some of the most significant decisions Beth and I have made over the last 20 years, from where to live, to what house to buy, to how many children to have, to when it was time to say goodbye to a place and people we love, to relocate halfway across the country, there are 3 questions we've consistently asked in those decisions, and I want to share them with you. Now, as a disclaimer, we haven't always asked them in the way that I'm going to share them. I've just kind of tried to package them in a way to make them memorable for you and for us moving forward. So 3 questions to ask in order to make great decisions. Write these down. Number 1, ask God to lead, not to bless. Ask God to lead, not to bless. Proverbs 16:3. Commit your actions to the Lord, and your plans will succeed. Now, so interesting, so important. It doesn't say commit your plans to the Lord, but commit your actions to the Lord. The truth is, oftentimes we want to make our plans and ask God to bless them with His stamp of approval. So we say, God, I really want to date her, make her say yes. Or God, I really want that house, make the loan come through. Or God, I really want that job, would you work it out? Or I want that promotion, would you let it be? Or God, here's my retirement plan, fund it, okay? And we bring him our plans and ask for his blessing. But this says, commit your actions to the Lord. I love this. The word commit actually means to roll onto. It means to put all of your weight onto something else. We were in Maine just a handful of weeks ago with our family. We spent a whole day biking 18 miles along carriage paths that were first constructed and financed by John Rockefeller at the beginning of the 20th century. So there's 43 miles of bike paths. It used to be horse and carriage paths running through Acadia National Park. We rented a little contraption because we wanted our whole family to go. So we rented a little contraption for my bike called a tag-along, which basically extends the bike into a tandem style so that my 5-year-old Lydia could ride. And so here's the picture. That's great. This is me and Lydia at the end of the ride. She rode 18 miles on the back of my bike. Isn't that great? One particular stretch was a 2-mile climb overlooking a beautiful place called Jordan Pond. And so if you can imagine, 2 miles uphill, I'm pedaling and huffing and puffing and sweating. And Lydia, she's so sweet. She's just humming and singing and talking. She wants to chat. And then, no joke, in the middle of this 2-mile climb, she goes, Dad, it's a lot easier going downhill than it is going uphill. Isn't that great? And I'm thinking, I don't say this. Parents, you can't always say what you think. I'm thinking, sweetie, you are right, but it should not matter to you a bit whether we're going uphill or downhill because you are not doing a single thing for this trip, okay? Except you're entertaining me. I'm like, just keep singing and let me do the work, right? I didn't say that. It was so sweet, so sweet. But that's the image. She could do that because she was leaning her weight onto me and letting me lead. And that's what that word means. It means to put all of your weight onto something or someone else and let them take the lead. Which means when it comes to making decisions, we might say to God, you know what, I might desire this thing, Father, but before I make any plans, I'm going to commit my path to you and let you lead. Before I ever make a decision, I'm going to predetermine to let you guide the decision-making process. So important. Whether we're going uphill or downhill, Father, whether this is a 1-mile decision or an 18-mile decision, I'm staying right behind you, and I'm going to lean my weight on you because Proverbs 16:3 says, I'm going to commit my actions to the Lord, and my plans will succeed. I'm going to roll my weight onto the Lord, trusting Him to bring about my plans. Now, some of you are asking, well, what do we do when our plans don't succeed in the way that we thought they would? And we believed with everything we were that we were committing our actions to the Lord. And I want to encourage you to hold on to that question because we're going to come back around to it by the time that we're through. But we got to get there first. And so the first question you got to ask is, ask God to lead, not to bless. Second question, ask for advice, not for affirmation. Ask for advice, not for affirmation. Beth and I, Proverbs 20:18, let me read this first. Plans succeed through good counsel. Don't go to war without wise advice. Well, don't go to war without wise advice. Beth and I have tried to make it a habit to bring the wisest, most insightful people into our lives when making significant decisions. For example, when I was going through a very challenging season of leadership and everything in me was saying to get out and run away. Have you ever been there? Just in a season of life where it's just like, get out and run away. I called up one of my best friends who happens to be the most decorated veteran in South Dakota who received the White Cross for his heroism in the Vietnam War. And though Ken lost half of his platoon in the Battle of Saigon, he was able to rescue and bring many of his platoon back to safety. If there is anyone who knows what it means to endure difficult times, which is a gross understatement. Ken knows what it means to endure tough times. So I'm sitting over a bowl of Louisiana gumbo with Ken, and he's listening to me share how difficult things were, and then he looked me in the eyes. I'll never forget it. Looks me in the eyes, and I'm going to tell you what he says, and one or two of you are going to be inclined to send me an email, but don't send me an email. Just consider who it's coming from, okay? Ken looks me in the eyes, and he says, Jed, you've got to get your butt back into the battle. Except he didn't say butt. You got to get your butt back into the battle. So you know what I did? I got my butt back into the battle. And in that moment, I thanked God for Ken, my trusted advisor. Because the truth is, like me, maybe you, we tend to make decisions in a vacuum and go to war without wise advisors. And in this moment, God placed a wise advisor in my court, and he told me the right thing. Too often, we step into a relationship without seeking the advice of a trusted friend, saying things like, of what you know of me in this person, will this lead me down the path of joy that God's created me for? Is this a great relationship to pursue? Too often we make financial commitments without talking to our spouse or financial advisor. We make career decisions without asking for insight from people who know us best. So important, instead of saying to trusted friends, of what you know of my skills, my passions, my experience, my giftedness, is this a right opportunity for me? Or am I taking it for the pay increase or the career promotion? Is it the right opportunity? Too often we throw in the towel on our marriage without ever going to a marriage counselor, or we wait to ask for counsel until the wheels have already started to come off the train. We don't go into war without advisors. We make parenting decisions without listening to those who are a lap or two ahead of us on the parenting journey. And then in all of those situations, we wonder why things aren't working out. Listen to Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14. Without wise leadership, a nation falls. There is safety in having many advisors. Now, if I had time, I'd break this whole text down for you. We could spend a whole day on it. We don't have a whole day, okay? Some of you are like, thank goodness, we don't have a whole day. But we don't have a whole day, so let me give you this very briefly. 3 things he's saying that really matter. Number 1, he's saying, be careful about making decisions on your own, lest you fall on your face. But number 2, he's saying, be very careful about making decisions based upon really bad advice. You don't just need advisors, you need great advisors. And how many of us have friends who don't make great advisors? Let them be a friend, don't let them speak into that area of your life. But how many of us have great friends that we need to invite into our lives as great advisors? Finally, he's saying, especially be careful about making a decision, get this, and then asking everyone to affirm your decision. Instead, you and I don't need affirmers, we need advisors. We need gracious, insightful people who will speak words of truth at the appropriate time into our lives. So, before making truly significant decisions, I'll just give you, if you're taking notes, 4 things Beth and I will regularly do. And I use this as an illustration because we make these decisions together, but I think they could prove true for you as well. When making a significant decision, the first thing we do is we invite a few trusted friends around us. And we'll literally get in the living room or we'll get across the table in a restaurant and we'll invite them into this area of our life, and then we'll explain the decision that we're considering. And then, this is so important, we give them permission to speak into this area of our lives. This is a vulnerable place where you say to someone you trust, you begin to entrust them with a particular area of your life and say, will you prayerfully consider this and speak in such a way that you feel like God's leading? We give them permission to speak into our lives. And number 4, we prayerfully put our weight onto God with them. Few things more encouraging than a band of brothers and sisters in our lives who will go to the Father with us and put their weight and ours together on Him, waiting for Him to answer. You gotta ask for advice, not for affirmation, and trust God to lead. Number 3, finally, ask the question, is it wise, not is it right? Ask, is it wise, not is it right. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. Now, I'll explain this before some of you misunderstand what I mean. I'm not suggesting that if you're so mad at your boss that you want to harm him, you should ask, is it wise to harm him? I'm not asking that, okay? It's probably not right to harm him. And if it's not right, it's not what? Wise, that's right, okay? I'm not asking if you're inclined to leave your spouse for another lover. I'm not suggesting you say, it's probably not wise, but it's probably not right, but it seems wise. I'm not suggesting that. Or listen, if you're straight up lying to or cheating someone, don't say it may not be right, but it appears to be wise based upon the outcome. Don't do that. Because if it's not right or what? Wise. It's not right or wise. However, many of the decisions that we face are not morally right or wrong, but they are wise or unwise. So we need to get into the habit of asking the question, is this decision wise? Now, I think one of the greatest resources on this is a book written by a pastor and author, Andy Stanley, who wrote a book called The Best Question Ever. I don't have time to explain it all, but in it, he talks about asking the question, is it wise? And he writes, there will be very few occasions when you are absolutely certain about anything. You will be consistently called upon to make decisions with limited information. That being the case, your goal should not be to eliminate uncertainty. Instead, you must develop the art of being clear in the face of uncertainty. And to do that, he goes on to say that if we want to make great decisions, we must look at those decisions from every angle. Now, I'm going to show you a statement he has in his book. He does a great job of breaking it apart. We're going to leave it up here long enough if you want to write it down. But here's what he says. As you face a decision, ask, in light of my past experiences, my current circumstances, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? You look at it from every angle. You exhaust it. In light of my past experiences, my current reality, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? And then with that statement, you begin to labor over that decision. You get to know it inside and out. You see it from every vantage point. And the more intimate you become with the decision you're considering making, the more chance you'll have at making a wise decision. You and I must learn to know our decisions inside and out. In a documentary about Vince Lombardi, who was arguably the greatest NFL coach of all time, Hall of Fame coach John Madden told a story about attending a clinic where Lombardi spoke about a running play that he made famous with the Green Bay Packers in the 1960s called the power sweep. Lombardi held the audience spellbound as he described that one play, the power sweep, he described that one play for 8 hours. Madden said, I went in that room cocky, thinking I knew everything there was to know about football, and he spent 8 hours talking about this one play. I realized that then I actually knew nothing about football. Isn't that great? Why? Because Lombardi knew the play inside and out. But Madden only knew a little bit about football at the time. And the point is this, I wonder how often we make decisions without truly understanding the scope of the decision we're making. And what could change if we begin to truly understand our decisions inside and out, past, present, and future, by asking the question, is it wise? Is it wise? As I said, Beth and I have learned over time to follow the process I've just shared with you. I recently found a journal from the years 2014, 2015. And I journal a lot because I like to pray in them, and I forget what I pray. So if I don't know what I pray, I don't know how God can answer. And so I like to go back and remind myself of what I was praying during this season and how God came through in that. And 2014, 2015, and this was the season in which we repeatedly asked God to guide our future, which ultimately led to our decision to relocate to Council Bluffs from the Boston area. I think of the trusted friends we invited into that decision. There was a defining moment when Beth and I stood together with Beth's family around her sister's kitchen in their dining room. And around the island. And my brother-in-law, Scott, just prayed for us in that moment for wisdom. And there's this moment where we kind of locked arms and we collectively leaned our weight into the Father. I think of how Beth and I made lists of pros and cons. We considered the impact of the move on our children. We weighed what we were gaining against what we were giving up in relocating from the East Coast back to the Midwest. And I'll tell you why this is so important. Days and weeks later, as we began to share about our move, a few people looked us in the eyes and said, "You are absolutely crazy for making this move." And you know what? If you relocated to the East Coast, some of your friends would look you in the eyes and say, "You are absolutely crazy for making this move," okay? It goes both ways. Some of my friends asked questions like, "Where are you going to fill your love for the city?" And we said, "You know what? We've got Omaha nearby. It's a great city. We love it. Beth and I were married in Omaha. We know it well. We love the city." They said, "Well, where are you going to find the mountains?" And we said, "Well, Colorado's only about 7 hours away, and we've got this little place called Mount Crescent." Okay? Great. Have you seen it? I think so, once. Some of them said, "Well, what about the beach? You love the beach?" And we're like, "Manawa, you know? Right? Come on." No, I'm just joking. Some of you live by Manawa. We're all from Manawa. It's okay. But in all seriousness, here's why this is important. We could answer their questions because even though, do not miss this, even though we were only about 80% confident that God was leading us in this direction. Some of you are like, "What are you talking about? Only 80% confident and you moved your family across the country?" Listen, I never got a dream. Jesus never showed up on my flat screen, okay? So we had to go through the process I just talked to you about, and we had to decide, is this a wise decision? At the end of the day, probably only about 80% confident that God was leading in that direction. But listen to me, do not miss this. We were 100% confident that we were leaning on Him. And here's why that matters. The beautiful thing about leaning all of your weight onto Jesus is that you can fall, but you cannot fail. You got that? You can fall, but you cannot fail. Here's the promise to hold on to. Proverbs 19:21, you can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail in your life. You can make many plans, and we do. Some of them good, some of them not. Some decisions great, some in hindsight we wouldn't have made again. No matter where you are, the Lord's purpose will prevail. I love this. Romans 8:28, the Apostle Paul said it this way. Every follower of Jesus needs to know this promise inside and out. And we know that God causes what? Everything. Okay, say it like you mean it. We know that God causes what? Everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose for them. And listen, when you know that God is working for your good, you can make a great decision that leads to a great outcome. And in that moment, you thank Him for His faithfulness. You can make a great decision that leads to a terrible outcome. And in that moment, you can still thank Him that He's not finished with you yet. You can make a terrible decision or a series of them in your life, and you can still be sure that that bad decision will not define your destiny. Because there is a Father behind the scenes of your life who is at work for the good of your life because you are called according to His purpose for your life. You say, "Well, what's His purpose for my life?" Well, if you read the narrative of Scripture, there's a God behind the fabric of your life who from the day you were put together in your mother's womb knew you by name, inside and out. Before you sucked your first breath of wind, He knew the days of your life before they even passed. He knows when you're on the mountain and in the valley. He knows when you're at the far reaches of the earth and when you're close by. He does not take His eyes off of you. He cares for you so deeply that He made a decision in time to give His only Son, Jesus Christ, to lay down His life for yours, to raise you up, to be called his own, son and daughter of the King. Jesus Christ made the decision to be obedient to the Father. He loved you when you were at his worst. You were at your worst. He suffered and died to forgive you completely. He conquered death so that you can enjoy him for all of eternity and live out his plans for your life. And listen, when you know that you're secure in the Father's love because of what Jesus has done for you, then you will conquer your fear of making poor decisions. And you will be given the courage to make great decisions. But no matter the outcome, even if the decision lies in your hands, your destiny belongs in his hands. And he is not finished with you yet. And so you run after the decision that God is calling you to. You invite people into your life. You ask if it's wise, and you lean your weight onto him, and you trust him to lead. And with time, I can assure you that he will, and he will never leave you or forsake you. Today, I wonder if across all of our services, there are people in this room who would say, Joe, that's great. I'm looking at a bunch of decisions in my life, and I can apply what you'd say. But if honest, you'd say, I've never made the decision to lean the weight of my life onto Jesus Christ by faith. I've never given him my whole life. And I'm telling you, you can go out from this place and make great decisions, but unless you know the security of the Father who has always loved you and always will, you'll falter. You'll falter. What would happen today if you said, oh, for the first time, I'm going to place my life into the hands of Jesus and lean my weight onto him? The Bible says that when we call out to Jesus and say that we need him to save us, to rescue us, he does. He calls us his own. He forgives us completely. He gives us confidence for today, hope for tomorrow. He promises to complete what he started in us right up until the day that Jesus Christ returns, and he will come again. He's at work in your life today. So the question is, will you respond to him and say yes to him? So I want to invite all of us right now to just bow your heads together, and I want to pray with you. And if that's a desire of your heart, I would just invite you to pray with me right in this place. With every head bowed, if your desire for the first time is to lean the weight of your life into Jesus, would you just tell him that? And just simply say, Jesus, I need you today. I need you. Say, I want you to be the king of my life. We say to him, Father, thank you for loving me enough to give Jesus for me. And today I give my life to you. And if God's doing that in your life, with every head bowed still, would you just not leave this place without letting us know the decision that you're making? You can come up to the front and tell me. You can go to the back to Guest Central. We'd love to help you take next steps on your relationship with Jesus. I just want to finish today by praying over this room. God, I know that today we're making decisions around relationships, around marriages, around families, around finances, around futures, around careers, around settings and regions and potential moves and colleges and places that will live and sink our roots and invest our lives. We're making those decisions so would you give us courage to wait on you, Father, and to hear you and to follow you. We trust you, Jesus. It's in your name we pray. We pray together. Amen. Amen. Hey, don't go anywhere quite yet. Can't wait until September 8th. Mark that on your calendars.